Hi everyone, welcome to the lecture Does Virgil Lie? Or Looking for the Historical Dido. To get us started, I thought we can briefly review the Dido part of Virgil's Aeneid, essentially the first four books of the epic. I'll use some of the stunning artwork on display in the National Gallery as our guide. Paintings from the National Gallery collection are flagged up in the top left corner. It is really a fabulous educational resource, and I highly recommend that you check it out. Their paintings are all online and come with engaging commentary and further info. But back to Virgil. To start with, I suggest we quickly orient ourselves where we are when the epic starts. Surprisingly, after the poem, we do not find ourselves, as one might have expected, in Troy. Rather, we are off the coast of Sicily, in the 7th year of Aeneas' travels. And when the goddess Juno spots the Trojan fleet, she unleashes an almighty storm that blows Aeneas and his boatloads of refugees right off course. Instead of landing in Italy as planned, they find themselves on the opposite side of the Mediterranean in Africa. And as they start exploring the land, they soon come upon a city rising, Carthage, under the leadership of Queen Dido. Here, some are digging the harbor. Here, others lay the deep foundations of their theater and hew out of the cliffs vast columns. Who knows what would have happened if Venus and Cupid, the two major mischief makers of Mount Olympus, hadn't interfered at this stage. And I mean mischief makers. Anywhere in art history you look, these two are up to no good. Whether playing rider and horse, practicing target peeing, or stealing honey. And the Aeneid is no exception. For reasons best known to herself, Virgil's Venus is not content with Jupiter's promise that the Carthaginians would offer Aeneas a friendly welcome. She decides to meddle and ensures that Dido falls head over heel in love with her son or sons. Cupid, of course, is a half-brother of Aeneas. Disguised as Aeneas' son Ascanius, Cupid joins the Trojan delegation even as they bring gifts to Queen Dido, and uses the lack of social distancing that ensues when Dido embraces him to infect her with desire for Aeneas, an Ovid 19 situation. Sulimina's picture captures the scene of Cupid, supposedly disguised as Ascanius, approaching Dido, though the painter, wanting to make sure that we get what's going on, has decided to leave out the disguise. Presumably, the Dido in the painting can't see the wings and the bow and arrow. Otherwise, even she might have smelled a rat. As it is, Dido receives them with open arms and lays on a lavish feast of welcome. During this banquet, Aeneas recounts his story, a tall tale that covers all of Aeneid 2 and 3. In Book 2, we get a retrospect of the fall of Troy, including the story of the Trojan horse, how it was built, and how it was brought into the city. In Book 3, we get an account of the travels that took the Trojans from Asia Minor to Sicily and finally Carthage, with all sorts of stopovers. Here is an illustration of the one on the island of Delos. Those familiar with buildings in Rome may well experience a strange sense that you've seen that building in the background of that slide before. It is the Pantheon in Rome, originally built by Agrippa, the general of the first princeps Augustus. So in a sense, what Aeneas hears and sees on the island of Delos is the future of Rome, the future of his family. Anyway, Aeneas' two-book tale of trials and tribulation does the trick. Not unlike the Trojan horse, Aeneas wheedles his way into the confidence of his hostess. And at the beginning of book 4, we find Dido in the thrall of passion, even though she has sworn eternal loyalty to her husband Zychaeus. Out on the hunt, a couple of days later, the couple seek shelter in a cave when a storm engineered by Venus and Juno strikes, and yield to an encounter of the carnal kind, with nymphs howling away on the mountaintop. That day, Virgil says, disagreeably linking sex to death, was when it all went wrong. Dido believes in a love match, in marriage and children, but Aeneas is ordered by Jupiter and Mercury to get his destiny back on track and abandons her in Carthage. And she feels that her only option is to take her own life. Sending a viciously efficacious curse after her former lover, Dido kills herself with his sword on a funeral pyre. That then is Virgil's Dido, and Dido's story according to Virgil, the Dido that has dominated art, literature, and thought ever since. But is what Virgil says about Dido true? You may well consider this a daft question, until perhaps you come across a poem attributed to the late antique author Ausonius, which imagines a statue of Dido telling her story of events. That one which you look at, traveler, am I, Dido, reproduced in wonderful ways and beautiful. I was such a person and did not possess the mind that Virgil invented for me, nor was my life tarnished by illicit desires. She does confess to having committed suicide in the poem, but not because she lost her chastity, but to preserve it. And at the end of the poem, she encourages everybody, me, you, everyone, not to believe the lying poets. Rather, we should believe the accounts that the historians give of her. So, who are the historians? If you rummage around in the margins of Greek and Roman literature, you'll find that Pseudo Ausonius is not the only author who features a historical Dido who never set eyes on Aeneas and lived an unblemished life. The church father Jerome, for instance, is another voice who endorses the historical Dido over and against Virgil's creation, as does another late antique author, the learned Macrobius. He even says that everyone knows that what you read in Virgil is not true. Ultimately, the authoritative account of the historical Dido goes back to the Greek historian Timaeus, who wrote in the 3rd century BCE, i.e. several centuries before Virgil. And in his account, the fall of Troy happened around 300 years before the birth of Dido. In his version, Aeneas and Dido simply could not have met. And interestingly, they also do not meet in Livy's History of Rome, who kind of follows the Timaean version. So essentially, the love affair between the Trojan prince and the Carthaginian princess is one grand epic fib on Virgil's part. So let's take stock of our key findings so far. In all likelihood, Virgil invented the encounter in the cave against a pre-existing historical tradition. Because of the success of the Aeneid, his version of the Dido myth became canonical. But some authors, writing in the margins of the classical tradition, preserve the early version of the Dido myth and accuse Virgil of lying. Interestingly enough, Virgil seems to have anticipated the charge of dishonest fiction. Right in the book Aeneid 4, in which he spreads nasty rumors about Dido, he features a figure, Fama, who is nasty rumor personified, who spreads nasty rumors about Dido and Aeneas in his literary world. This raises the question, is Virgil in the same business as Fama? What, if anything, makes him different from Fama? And where does this leave us, you? Not least as regards classical authors and the authority of canonical literature. This is a question that doesn't have an easy answer, and there is not the place here to do it justice. But I do invite you to explore the question further on your own with your teachers, perhaps with reference to the following resources.